This is the Tobago House of Assembly's post-Executive Council media briefing for week ending July 21st, 2012. Joined by traffic consultant Dr. Ray Furlong and BBFL Director William Aguilera, Infrastructure Secretary Hilton Sandy focuses on the proposed roundabout for Orkinscure Junction.
Today this press briefing is called specifically to deal with the question of the roundabout to be constructed at Orkinscure Boku Junction. As you know that I would have made several pronouncements at our press briefing about the construction of that roundabout, which is geared to control the traffic and to curtail the accidents at that junction. And you know, now that we are looking to put things in place, we're having some cries from the public but whether we should have a roundabout there or not. But before I ask the technical persons to speak to you, we have Dr. Furlong, who is our traffic personnel who works with the Assembly, and Mr. Bill, who also do designs for us with our roundabouts. I will just give you a slight briefing to how we come about to reaching this stage of getting roundabouts in Tobago. Because of the same complaint of problems at Orkinscure and Boku Junction and the Shervan Milford Road Junction, as the secretary for the division, I would have invited Dr. Furlong to come to Tobago and do a look at the traffic starting from Wilson Road Junction to the Shervan Milford Road Junction, and what could be recommended at the junctions of Montgomery, Orkinscure and Shervan, where we had the complaint. And after careful study by his company, he would have recommended the use of roundabout at Montgomery Junction, Orkinscure Boku Junction, and at Shervan. That is how the division went about informing the Executive Council to put in roundabouts in Tobago. We would have constructed the first one that was recommended by the said company at the Hospital Junction, which is now in use and is being used most effectively by our motorists.
Why a roundabout consideration for the Orkinscure intersection? Well, at some point in the discussion, we look at the drawing that we have prepared to show you, but the intersection now is very large, and over the years it was expanded presumably to improve traffic flow and reduce traffic accidents. I have to say presumably because I'm yet to find out in detail why a normal major minor road intersection, meaning a minor road coming out to a major highway like the Claude Noel Highway, why was it made so large? By large, I mean the size of that intersection is almost 60 meters in width, which means that even if nothing is done, the people leaving the Boku Bay area coming out onto the Claude Noel Highway wishing to come towards Scarborough, it's a long exit lane which naturally would tempt the driver to speed, yet it is a give way or even a stop to get onto the highway. If the driver is turning right to go towards Bon Accord, yes, it's a stop, but the intersection is so large that there is a temptation to look up and down, north, east and west, if you like, without stopping and enter the highway. So that when we were called in to see how we could improve the traffic movement while maintaining a major consideration for intersection traffic safety, we recognize that, listen, you can use the concept of relative speed, and I'll explain the term relative speed shortly. Relative speed upon which the principle upon which a roundabout is based, and satisfy and be able to satisfy movement as well as safety. What is relative speed? We are speaking about the speed of traffic coming from one direction relative to the speed of traffic coming from another direction and having to use the same space, which is the principle of a major minor intersection, the traffic light control intersection, traffic signal control, or roundabout. Roundabout is the only means by managing relative speed efficiently. Now, that's provided you have the space. I started the discussion by saying you had more than enough space for a roundabout at that intersection. Some people may argue, well, why not go for an elevated intersection, which is an interchange? Well, in traffic engineering, the principle the principle is very simple. We always say you work with space and time. If you are allowed to travel the same space as the normal intersection, then you operate by shifting time. It's my time first and then your time. So a signal intersection will be you wait till you get the green and you come out. A roundabout, the relative speed of one vehicle to the other, those on the right are given priority versus those on the left, if it's a major minor stop like that. An interchange, however, where it is one road is elevated over the other, then at the same point in time, you travel different spaces. Why not a elevated intersection? Well, of course, an elevated intersection is quite costly, and it will perhaps incur acquisition of some additional lands to be able to get. So that was out of the question. Could anything have been done within the framework of the space and within a reasonable cost? We come back to the roundabout. So you have a reduced relative speed, you have a large space, which you can reduce if you wish, and we said that, listen, nobody is going to accept we have all this space and you come in here to provide a means of solution by reducing the space. So we tried to use the existing space, not taking additional space, and seeing what capacity, level of movement or capacity you can get for the roundabout. You may or may not be surprised to know that the capacity that we have been able to achieve by this roundabout, and I will describe in detail the components of the roundabout shortly, the level of service, as we call it in traffic, or the ability of the intersection to accommodate traffic is very high, so much so that we are convinced even if the Claude Noel Highway is dualed, you will not have to touch the roundabout or touch improvements to that intersection for a long time to come. The other advantage is that the movements that you already have taking place are able to clear the intersection almost on an equal basis because of that same concept I mentioned of the relative speed. In addition to that, there are two lanes, so it's what is called a double lane roundabout. There are two lanes that are going to be created so that the vehicle proceeding west to east or east to west can virtually stay within the same lane upon reaching the roundabout and get through. Of course, you will have to give way to the vehicle on the right, but because of the size of the intersection and the nature of the concept of the relative speed, we believe it can operate very efficiently.
We just want you to make sure that the design that is being presented to you is being done by all means by international standards that all being applied. The width of the lane, the entry angles, the exit, the shoulders, the drains, the levels have all been considered, and we're also trying to maximize the space and minimize cost. As such, we're looking at keeping the drains that are being modified as we speak, and to provide it with a system that is going to be very efficient. Keep in mind that these roads are not only going to be traveled by small vehicles, you're also going to have large containers, and traffic is going to increase. That's why you're going to see that some of the lanes appear to be extra wide, but there's a weaving factor when you come in and out. There's a merging factor also in and out. As you all know, you're supposed to give way to the vehicles already traveling around the roundabout, and you have one lane coming out of a roundabout, but you have two vehicles trying to get out. So all of those considerations were kept in mind in providing a design that is going to be operationally safe. And we believe that even though some people may have concerns, we understand that, but it's the best solution that you have given the parameters that we have been given to work with. By the end of the day, I believe that people will get used to it, and it's going to provide it with a much safer situation at that junction. And we believe that in a few weeks, which is normally what it takes for people to get used to the new traffic patterns, things will be resolved, and we believe that everybody will be happy. Mr. Sandy has taken the initiative to look at all of these junctions, trying to make sure that everybody has a safe way home. Accidents happen. We're trying to do as much as we can by implementing situations like this one, so that you have an improved junction, and we are trying to provide it with the best that we can given the circumstances, and I think that at the end of the day everybody will be happy. Beyond that, we'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody may have, but as you will see, we will proceed. Even the design has catered for trying to disrupt traffic at the minimum. Every construction project is going to have disruptions. We're trying to construct the southern part of the roundabout first without inconvenience the motorists much, and opening sections in such a way that we try to minimize traffic, because we understand it's very important for you not to be delayed regardless of where you are going. And at the same time, we also want you to be safe.
In terms of the roundabout design, there is an internal shoulder that we are creating, apart from Bill mentioned the double lanes and the wider lanes, because a vehicle in a roundabout is going around in circles, so to speak, and you cannot have the same lane width as the carriageway, the normal roadway. In addition to that, there are other points that I am telling you here now to establish that this is a science. You simply cannot jump in your car and drive around and say that roundabout too big. Why we have such a big thing? Why we can't go wrong here and go wrong here? Those kind of ignorant type statements need to be shifted out of your mind, because there's a science towards it. One of the terms used, I mentioned about relative speed. Another term used is the entry width, the width of the roadway prior to entering the roundabout. There is a standard. Bill mentioned it. We are using the AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, which is the standard of road geometric design used in both Trinidad and Tobago, and certainly the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure in Trinidad, they would adhere to that as well. There's also the exit width of the lane, which is the opposite of the entry. That has to be a certain radius of curvature and so on. I don't, propose to go too much into the engineering details, but in the internal shoulder is for a large truck. If you have a 40-foot container wishing to turn from perhaps the right lane, the truck will be able to ride the shoulder. It's a usable shoulder to be able to accommodate. So all these are factors. A major, Bill just mentioned it briefly, but a major factor in design of a roundabout is the drainage. A roundabout cannot be designed flat, as you know the roundabout at the hospital, the new roundabout at the hospital, is designed as a sloping plate, so that there is quick runoff off of the roadway, so that there is no incident of hydroplaning or skidding of the vehicle in going around the roundabout. So drainage consideration is an important factor in design. I just want to talk a little about the driving on the roads here in Tobago. I look at the stretch of road on the Claude Noel, particularly in the Lambo area, and I see you have a 2-lane road. It so happens that the shoulder is wide and the shoulder surface is almost the same or the same as the road surface, and people make 3 lanes on the road, Mr. Sandy. And it's accepted because the man driving down the road, I will see him pulling on the left to allow the next man to pass him on 2 lanes. Right? The speed, if you stand up on top of the hill there at the Hawkins-Court Junction, you will see people flying past virtually without consideration that, listen, that's an intersection ahead of me. Somebody is likely to be doing something that I will not know of, so that it is almost the approach to driving on the Claude Noel Highway in large is almost like the devil take the hindmost. Can you imagine converting that to, as I understand somebody suggested, converting it to a signalized intersection? We already don't stop at the major minor. We're going to stop at the signals, or we're going to try to beat the signals. In addition to that, traffic signals require maintenance. Do you have the regular capability of maintaining not only the physical components, but the timing components of the light to ensure that it's in sync with what the demands of the traffic are? Early morning, midday, night hours, and so forth and so on. Thirdly, the markings on the highway themselves. If you look at the markings at the Claude, at the intersection of the Gulf City Mall, the markings are far different from the other intersections on the highway. In other words, if you are at the other intersections and you're on the lane of the road and you get stopped at one of the traffic lights, you are quite likely to be in the right turning lane without knowing it, because the layout of the markings is not appropriate to the intersection at hand. So all these factors need to be considered rather than somebody simply saying, well, why did you put traffic light there, boy? In addition to that, if you were to put traffic lights at the Hawkins-Court intersection now, you will have to reduce the size of the intersection, because the intersection does not facilitate easily traffic lights, especially the left turning movements that you have. Nobody is going, who is accustomed to operating at high speed and nose curve, going to subject themselves to a traffic light intersection easily. You can do it, but judging from how they drive on the roads right now, I don't think curbing that is a safe maneuver. What we suggest is the roundabout will reduce the relative speed appropriately. It will not make them drastically come from the speed they're going at to zero. That's a major factor in why we consider the roundabout.
Traffic calming device.
It's a traffic calming device, as Engineer Bill would say.
What internal cost would be about the same as or could be less as up at the hospital, about $4 million. Could be a little more based on what we have to do. We have a little more cutting to do, and you know what. Obviously within a $4 million. It goes over, it might be for extra paving of the highway. With good weather, I will say about within 3 months. Could be before, but within 3 months I give myself to get it in.
I stayed away from trying to adjust the design to any particular culture, because then I will be interfering with the standards of the AASHTO and the various manuals that we're using. Those manuals were developed from their research and accepted internationally as well, so that we believe that if the standards and specifications are adhered to, including the signing, marking, and so on, and all the information that go along with the design of a roadway, meaning the speed limits and those side of things, those should be enforced. But we cannot put up a facility and have zero enforcement. It will almost be like the Autobahn. This is not the Autobahn. There are certain restrictions that must go with it, and we are expecting that the enforcement would follow. Well, I found out a little bit about that roundabout, and I am not so sure what the standard of design was for the roundabout. So it may well, as I've seen around the island, around the Caribbean, in different territories, is one thing to say something is a roundabout and how it will operate as a roundabout, but it is not designed as a roundabout. For example, it could be sometimes in the books they call it the very small roundabouts of 3 and 4, a meter, 2 meters, some of them 1.5 meters. Those are really traffic circles. You have them in residential areas. I'm not sure what the diameter of that one was. The one at Signal. Right. So if you have a small roundabout, right, at the Wilson Road, I believe it was, then it is really a traffic circle. And Bill mentioned an important part of the operation of a roundabout is what we call weaving. And weaving has to do with the circumference of the roundabout. What is weaving? Weaving is crossing from one approach into another approach, where vehicles, one is going from east to west and the other is going from south to north, and they are going to cross. If the size of the roundabout is too small, then the weaving length, the length at which the vehicles are allowed to safely cross, is compromised. So the function will be inefficient and the performance of the roundabout will be poor. This is catered for. This is catered for in the design use here. There is adequate weaving length. There is sufficient lane width and the weaving lengths and entry width and exit, so that this is designed. I am not so sure if the other that you have is designed. So I cannot say yea or nay on the exact function of that one. Pedestrians should not cross through or across a roundabout. We are providing for crossing, safe crossing areas away from the roundabout. Close to where the shelters are, but will be properly signed and marked. And I'm not so sure. I think it's of the order about 60 centimeters away, Bill. It's of that order. It's more or less where they are now. But one of the reasons you do not want to have people crossing through the roundabout, they have so many lanes to cross. And you do not want them near the entry to the roundabout, because you will be slowing, you will be further decreasing the relative speed. So you want to keep them sort of what we call mid-block of the traffic, mid-block of the roundabout. The other thing that we may have to consider, certainly Tobago, as in its futuristic thinking, the world is looking at this. In fact, I'm presenting a paper to some disabled and physically challenged people on Saturday, and we are all getting older. The elderly, that has some level of impairment to our ability to move around. But if you have a blind person wishing to cross the roundabout, it's difficult for a blind person to cross any road, any intersection, but especially a roundabout is particularly difficult because there is no audible device of a traffic signal, a bell, so that the research is now looking into crossing devices to facilitate people who want to get across the roadway away from a roundabout. That's new research going on. I'm sure you will not have that at this time, but it's but perhaps futuristic thinking in crossing at those stopping bays. The other thing about the crossing at those areas I mentioned is that you'll sort of kill two birds with one stone. They'll be at a transit shelter, a bus shelter, so that people will stop off there to cross the road or wait for their transport at that location. Consideration is being given for the entire length of the roadway, so that people who wish to walk safely away from the roadway, of course, consideration is not planned in this design, but consideration is being given to safely traverse the area for people on non-motorized modes, so to speak.
You have the highway code, which is there what the speed limit in Tobago should be, and you should, when you're coming to an intersection like a roundabout, it's natural that drivers would slow. What happens at traffic lights? Instead of drivers slow, they speed up, because you speed up to beat the traffic light, that you don't wait this extra time behind the light. So if you have a green, or you're getting, sometimes you get to the amber, they try to jump across, because they say, okay, if the change is not as yet, so I can beat the lights. With the roundabout, what you have is the slowing up, because I know, having traversed the road on a daily basis, I get it in my system that I have to slow up at that and take what I have to do at that junction. And you know, I have to give right, I mean, our regulations, when we go for driving tests, it's always the item is changed now, that you give on a roundabout, that you give way to the vehicle on your right on the roundabout. So it's always, we've learned that. But the signage will be important. We put up the necessary sign to give you that guidance. And I am of the view that automatically, after you have used it for 2 or 3 times for the week, or even for the day, when it's put into use, it becomes part of your routine, knowing that the roundabout is there. Because now that we are speaking about it, it is good, it is healthy. Because when it gets there, you know it was being constructed and it's now open for use. It's not something coming overnight. 3 months under construction, you will start to get it in your system. Look, the roundabout is coming. I have to get used to use the roundabout. I may have Dr. Falong do something that we can show on the television as to how roundabouts should be used. We will do on the TV and talk about it. I may get him come back and go with the licensing officer and have a discussion on the TV how you use roundabout. Right now is that the habit is, I can take this lane fast. That's what is in your system. I know when I'm going up to the hospital, before I would have gone over a hump to get into Signal Hill. Now at Signal Hill, I know there's a roundabout. And by now they've get used to it, so I have to go around the roundabout. So I'm saying over time that you'll get used. It's just a matter that we have to prepare ourselves for changes. And if persons knew that they were roundabout before, as explained, that was not a full roundabout, it was a circle. Now you are doing a design roundabout. And I want to state here that it was not done based on just saying, I'm going to draw a roundabout and put it in. The company would have done vehicle checks. They had a vehicle count at both that junction and at Chevron Junction. The count was done. When we come to look at Mount Murray, we'll do the same thing. Because as you know, Mount Murray, there's a problem there. And if we have to improve our traffic movement and do a new town plan, all those intersections and movement of traffic would have to come into consideration, because what is happening right now in discussing with the qualified persons is that our traffic is getting into Scarborough too quick and is crowding the city. So you have to do things as they do all over the world. You create the move, as you said, relative speed, the control to keep that traffic out there for a while so they don't get in too fast. And how you do it? Some is roundabout, some is very large roundabout. For example, we would have noticed in Trinidad, they would have created around the savannah. To go around the savannah, it's a roundabout, if you call it that way. It's a very large roundabout because you have to go around the savannah to make that thing. I mean, when it was put in place, people talked about it, but now it's the way you have to go around the savannah. So I'm saying that changes, we fear change, we resist change. But sometimes we have to consider that the change is for our good. Now that we are moving into thinking differently, Tobago is getting big, we're getting more cars, more traffic. The city cannot stretch, the road cannot stretch, you cannot break down the houses to put cars in. As we plan to take service out of Scarborough into the other areas, other communities, we have to now control the flow of traffic into the city. So the first thing you do is to start controlling at the roundabouts, open up the Milford Road, putting in new bridges, and doing things so that when you do bring your traffic plan, you have extra road movement that you can say, okay, if we divert the traffic this way, it wouldn't take too long getting back to this way. So it's the thinking that you have to work together, put all the planning in place before you can come up with new plan of traffic in Scarborough.
Thank you for watching the Tobago House of Assembly's Post-Executive Council Media Briefing for week ending July 21st, 2012. For the Department of Information, I am Sophie Guillaume.